Have you ever spent 25 years building a life with someone only to realize they had already planned your exit? Have you ever smiled through an anniversary dinner while the person sitting across from you was waiting for the perfect moment to break your heart? My name is Emily Carter. I'm 52 years old, and until last spring, I believed my husband and I had survived everything life could throw at us. The mortgage, the layoffs, the sleepless nights raising 2 children, the loss of both our parents. 25 years of marriage. I thought we'd earned the right to grow old together. Instead, on the night of our silver anniversary, my husband reached into his jacket pocket, not for a gift, not for a piece of jewelry, not even for a card. He slid a thick envelope across the table. "I think you'll understand," he said quietly. Inside were divorce papers. The waiter was pouring champagne when my world fell apart. Everyone around us kept laughing. Glasses kept clinking. Soft jazz floated through the restaurant. Meanwhile, I couldn't even hear my own heartbeat. I looked up at the man I'd loved for half my life. Is this some kind of joke? He didn't even flinch. No, it's time we both moved on. I didn't cry. Not there. I folded the papers, set them back on the table, finished the last sip of my coffee, then I stood up. Happy anniversary. Those were the last words I said before walking out. At that moment, I thought losing my marriage was the worst thing that could happen. I had no idea that less than 12 hours later, my husband's own lawyer would call me, and everything I believed about my marriage would change forever. When people hear the words 25 years, they picture a perfect marriage. The truth is usually more complicated. Mark and I met at a neighborhood barbecue in Columbus, Ohio. He made me laugh. He remembered little things. He'd bring coffee to my office just because he knew I had a stressful week. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't rich, he was dependable. At least, that's what I believed. We built our first home together, raised 2 incredible kids, missed vacations so we could pay college tuition, celebrated promotions, survived recessions. Like every married couple, we argued about money, about parenting, about whose turn it was to call the plumber, but never once did I imagine divorce. Whenever friends split up, Mark would squeeze my hand and say, "That'll never be us." I believed him, because trust doesn't disappear overnight. It fades one unanswered question at a time. A few months before our anniversary, something changed. Mark started working late, again. His phone never left his hand. He smiled at messages he never shared. If I walked into the room, he'd flip the screen over. When I asked if everything was okay, he always had the same answer. "Work's been crazy." I'd heard that before. After 25 years, you learn not to panic every time life gets busy. Besides, our daughter had just gotten engaged, our son had accepted a job in Texas. I thought we were entering a new chapter together. Instead, Mark had already started writing one without me. The reservation was at the same steakhouse where he proposed 25 years earlier. I wore the navy blue dress he'd once said was his favorite. I even found our old anniversary photo and tucked it into my purse, thinking we'd laugh about how young we looked. Mark barely looked at me all evening. He checked his watch, answered 2 text messages, barely touched his dinner. Then the champagne arrived. I smiled. 25 years. He nodded. Yeah. No smile, no toast, just silence. Then he reached into his jacket. For one hopeful second, I thought it might be a necklace. Instead, the envelope slid across the table. "Please don't make this harder than it has to be." I stared at the words on the front. Petition for dissolution of marriage. My fingers went cold. I looked around the restaurant. Other couples were celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, retirements. Nobody noticed that my entire life had just been folded into legal paperwork. "I've already signed," he said. "You should have a lawyer look it over." I searched his face for regret, for guilt, for anything. There was nothing, only relief. That hurt more than the papers themselves. I stood slowly. "You planned this?" He looked down. "For months." That answer shattered something inside me, not because he wanted a divorce, because he'd spent months pretending everything was fine. When I reached the parking lot, I finally cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears behind the steering wheel. 25 years, reduced to 38 pages of legal language. I drove home alone, believing the worst chapter of my life had just begun. I couldn't have been more wrong. Because the next morning, at exactly 8:17 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID read, "Harrison and Cole, Attorneys at Law." It was my husband's lawyer, and the very first words out of his mouth made me pull my car onto the side of the road. "Mrs. Carter, I need to apologize." I pulled my SUV onto the shoulder of the road. For a few seconds, I just stared at my phone. Why would Mark's lawyer be calling me? Had he forgotten another document? Was he trying to pressure me into signing? I answered anyway. "This is Emily." The voice on the other end sounded older than I expected. Professional, calm. But there was something else. Regret. "Mrs. Carter, my name is Richard Harrison. I'm the attorney representing your husband. I owe you an apology." I frowned. "I'm sorry?" There was a long silence before he spoke again. I don't usually make personal calls to opposing spouses, but after what I witnessed yesterday, I couldn't sleep. A knot formed in my stomach. "What are you talking about?" He took a slow breath. "Your husband didn't tell you everything." Those 7 words sent a chill down my spine. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "What didn't he tell me?" I'm not at liberty to discuss confidential conversations, but there are documents I believe you should have before you sign anything. My heart started pounding. "Are you saying I shouldn't sign the divorce papers?" "I'm saying, please hire your own attorney first." His voice grew quieter. "And whatever you do, don't leave the house." I blinked. "What?" "Mrs. Carter, if you voluntarily move out, it could seriously affect your position during the divorce." I looked back toward my neighborhood. Until that moment, I had been planning to pack a suitcase and stay with my sister. Richard's warning changed everything. "Why are you telling me this?" Another long pause. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Because after 30 years practicing family law, I've learned the difference between ending a marriage and taking advantage of someone." Before I could ask another question, he ended the call. I sat there for a few minutes. The tears from the night before were gone. Now, I felt something different. Confusion. Instead of driving to my sister's house, I drove back home. Mark's car wasn't there. The garage was empty. Inside the house, everything looked exactly the same. Our wedding photo still hung above the fireplace. Family pictures lined the hallway. Our granddaughter's finger painting was still taped to the refrigerator. 25 years, still hanging on the walls. But suddenly, nothing felt real anymore. As I walked upstairs, I noticed something strange. Mark's closet was nearly empty. Half the hangers were gone. His golf clubs, gone. His passport, gone. Even his favorite leather jacket had disappeared. He hadn't decided to leave yesterday. He'd been leaving, piece by piece, for weeks, maybe months. I sat on the edge of our bed. That's when I noticed a small notebook tucked beneath his nightstand. It wasn't hidden very well, almost like he'd forgotten it, or maybe he never expected me to come back. I opened it. Most of the pages contained numbers, budgets, property values, investment accounts. Nothing unusual. Until I reached the last page. Written in blue ink were 3 words. Lakeview Condominiums. Underneath, a unit number. And 1 sentence. Closing Friday. Closing? On what? I grabbed my laptop. Within seconds, I found the property online. Luxury riverfront condos, starting at nearly $900,000. My stomach dropped. There were paparazzi photos of the building, modern kitchens, private balconies, a rooftop pool. This wasn't just somewhere Mark wanted to move. He'd already bought it, without telling me. The realization hit me at once. The late nights, the secret phone calls, the missing clothes, the divorce papers. This hadn't been a sudden decision. It had been carefully planned, every single detail, every single step. And I had been the last person to know. I closed the laptop. For the first time since the anniversary dinner, I wasn't crying anymore. I was thinking. Grandpa used to tell me, when someone shows you exactly who they are, believe them the first time. I finally did. That afternoon, I made one call, not to Mark, not to my sister, to the best family law attorney in Columbus. Her receptionist answered immediately. Law offices of Susan Whitmore? I said 4 words that changed everything. I need your help. Little did I know, within 48 hours, Susan would uncover something in Mark's financial records that even his own lawyer hadn't seen. And when she did, the divorce Mark had planned so carefully would begin to fall apart. Susan Whitmore looked nothing like the lawyers you see on television. She wasn't loud. She didn't make dramatic promises. She simply listened. For nearly 2 hours, I told her everything. The anniversary dinner, the divorce papers, the phone call from Mark's attorney, the condo, the empty closet. When I finally finished, Susan folded her hands. Emily, has your husband ever handled the family finances? I nodded. Mostly. He always said he was better with investments. She gave me a knowing look. That's usually where we start. Over the next 3 days, Susan requested financial records through legal discovery, bank statements, retirement accounts, mortgage documents, tax returns. At first, everything looked normal. Then, Susan noticed something strange. Every month, for almost 18 months, the exact same amount of money had been transferred into an account I'd never heard of. Not thousands, hundreds. Just enough to avoid drawing attention. Month after month, year after year. Susan smiled. People hiding money almost always think small transfers are invisible. They're not. By the end of the week, we discovered nearly $487,000 had quietly disappeared from our marital accounts. Money Mark believed I'd never notice. A few days later, Susan received a call. It was Richard Harrison, Mark's attorney. "I need to meet." His voice sounded exhausted. When he walked into Susan's office, he didn't even sit down. "I resigned." Susan was surprised. "You resigned from the case?" Richard nodded. "I won't represent a client who lies to the court." He placed a thick folder on the conference table. "I can't violate attorney-client privilege, but these documents were mistakenly omitted from the initial financial disclosure." Susan opened the folder. Her eyebrows slowly lifted. Hidden brokerage accounts, a second retirement fund, stock options, property records. Richard quietly said, "I believe your husband intended to disclose them after the divorce was finalized." Susan looked up. "That's financial fraud." Richard nodded. "I know." Then he stood. "I wish you the best, Mrs. Carter." As he walked toward the door, he stopped. "I've practiced law for 32 years. I've seen marriages fail, but I've never seen someone try to erase 25 years the way your husband did." Then he left. 2 months later, we stood inside a Franklin County courtroom. Mark looked confident. Too confident. His attorney had been replaced by someone younger, someone who clearly believed this would be an easy settlement. The judge reviewed the financial disclosures. Then Susan calmly stood. "Your Honor, we have additional evidence." She handed the clerk 3 binders, every hidden account, every wire transfer, every document, every signature. The courtroom became silent. The judge spent nearly 20 minutes reading. Finally, he looked directly at Mark. "Mr. Carter, did you intentionally fail to disclose these assets?" Mark swallowed. His attorney leaned toward him. But it was too late. The judge already knew. "So the answer is yes?" Mark lowered his eyes. After a short recess, the judge returned with his ruling. He wasn't angry. He was disappointed. In divorce proceedings, honesty isn't optional. Attempting to hide marital assets undermines the integrity of this court. Then came the decision. Emily would receive the marital home, 50% of every disclosed asset, a significant portion of the hidden accounts because of Mark's misconduct, and reimbursement for nearly all legal fees. Mark closed his eyes. The divorce he had planned for months had completely unraveled. Not because of revenge, because of the truth. 3 weeks later, I moved into a quieter rhythm of life. Our children visited often. The house felt different. Not empty, peaceful. One Saturday morning, my daughter stopped by with coffee. She hugged me and smiled. "You know what I'm proud of?" I laughed softly. "What?" "You never tried to destroy Dad. You just refused to let him destroy you." Her words stayed with me all day, because she was right. Justice isn't about making someone suffer. Sometimes it's simply refusing to surrender your dignity. 6 months later, I received one final letter. Not from a lawyer, from Mark. Inside was a handwritten note. "Emily, I spent so much time chasing the life I thought I wanted. I forgot the one I already had. I'm sorry." There wasn't a request, No excuses. No attempt to come back. Just an apology. I folded the letter carefully and placed it inside an old family photo album. Forgiveness doesn't always mean rebuilding a relationship. Sometimes, it's simply putting down the weight someone else left you carrying. Looking back now, people ask if winning in court felt good. The truth? The court wasn't the victory. The real victory happened the morning after our anniversary, when I answered one unexpected phone call. If Richard Harrison hadn't chosen integrity over silence, I might have signed away everything we'd built together. Instead, I learned something far more valuable than money. A marriage can end, a house can be sold, retirement accounts can be divided, but self-respect, once you choose to protect it, nobody can ever take it away again. And that's the lesson I hope my children, and someday my grandchildren, remember long after they're gone. Because sometimes, the best chapter of your life begins the morning after you think your story has fallen apart. The end.